Welcome to the World Tour of Meditation. Our purpose here is to transcend the fear right now through debunking popular myths around what meditation is so that you can actually access deep inner peace, calm, and joy. And today I'm so thrilled to have with us Brigette Patton, who is this extraordinary, soulful spiritual counselor, guide. She has a business called Soul Massages. And why is it called Soul Massages, Brigette?
Because I see it visually in my mind's eye as a massage of the edges so that the soul can come in. So there's room for the soul to express itself through the body.
I love that. A massage around the edges so there's room for the soul to come in. So that's what Brigette does. And she's also got a group on Facebook called the Soul Embodiment Tribe. Is there anything you want to add?
Just that I'm very honored to be here and to collaborate in these really remarkable ways in these times. And I'm excited to see what Spirit brings in and through us with this dynamic and with this specific audience that Spirit already knows who is listening and who will be hearing this. And to be the mouthpiece for that is just thrilling, really, truthfully, in this season that we're all in humanity.
Good gosh. Thank you. I'm excited. First thing I want to jump into is horses.
Yes.
Brigette, you work with horses and you did something with horses yesterday. And horses have shown up around me like 3 times, 3 different people in the last 2 days. Tell us a little bit about horses and then tell us a little bit about horses and today.
So horses are really who were the catalyst for me connecting with my spiritual gift in a conscious way. I've always had, a draw to horses. I pretty much was obsessed with the movie National Velvet as a child. I watched it constantly over and over again. I don't know if you are familiar with it. It's a really old movie, and this little girl just loves this horse, and she wins a horse race with this horse. And she's not, first of all, she breaks the rules because women aren't even supposed to be jockeys, and she's a little girl and she trains to race this horse. And it just, the courage and the energy in that just always stuck with me. And as I moved into adulthood, I had my own family and my own children, and horses have just always been a way to find myself. No matter how often my identity externally changes or shifts, they always are mirroring back to me and reminding me of who I am. And so horses are really coming in right now because of the dynamic of their nature and their community. So when you think of a herd, each one in the herd has a role and has a responsibility. There's scouts, there's, the lead mare and the lead stallion, and then there's all the horses in between, and they have a dynamic, just like many animals in nature, if we take a minute to observe it. But horses specifically have a very large heart space, and the energy that they put out just naturally balances and neutralizes our energy field. So they're giving that biofeedback all the time. They're mirroring energetically what's going on in the environment, much like children. So I do work virtually so that as I'm talking, the horses are able to, they'll do like licking and chewing. Chewing on it is like chewing on thinking about it. And, sometimes they'll stretch, sometimes they'll yawn. I mean, they will do all different kinds of things, and they'll move around me based off their personality and their gift. Each horse has a different gift to share and different message. So, one might be really profound with bringing out our ability to set boundaries, and another one may allow us to have compassion with ourselves. So it's very much like the healers here. Yes.
And just to clarify, you said you work virtually. So are these real horses who have different gifts, or are these virtual horses that have different gifts?
These are my horses on my property, and I have a camera that I work with the horses, and I have, just like we're doing here, I'm talking virtually, and instead of sitting in front of my screen, I'll be out with my horses and they will be communicating as I'm talking and coaching the other person. So they're mirroring what we're talking about. And it really helps the mind accept what we're talking about, because when I'm working with them, yes, I massage the edges, but we go deep, and it's a penetrating energy that cuts through illusion, that cuts through belief systems that aren't serving our highest purpose, where we've given our power away in some shape or form. And so the horses mirror that back to us so that we can accept it. We can, have courage and trust around our certainty of ourselves. And it just really drives home that inner connection and inner authority. And so the horses have a very strong message for us right now, in power in the community, and collaborating and working together, and each person being seen as an individual but not getting lost in the herd. Not, the horses modulate energy so naturally, because if something happens, they just move and shift and then go about to grazing again. Unless there's real danger, like a threat, they just move about and do whatever it is that they do, and they go back to grazing. And so there isn't fighting involved. Sometimes, yes, there is a dynamic that happens where the horses will, if a new horse is moving up in authority or something like that, they're going to balance the energy. And it's really, you'll see the lead horse out in the pasture is doing really the least amount of work. They drink first, they eat first, but they're also watching out for every single horse in the herd.
When you say they do the least amount of work?
They're standing and watching. They're, relaxed. They're not moving around a lot. They're not wasting their energy.
That, and the observation when they're standing and watching.
And they oftentimes may not even be involved in a lot of play, because they have taken on, the position of the matriarch or what have you. And so they'll kind of be in a position of authority and managing the energy of the group and holding space for the group, and making sure that if someone's getting out of line, they'll even, I've watched them give direction to one of the other horses to go take care of one of the other horses that is misbehaving.
What does that look like?
It's just, you can just watch it. You don't actually necessarily see them doing something, but you see it happen. Sometimes it's a look, sometimes it's a flick of the ear. It's just an awareness of the energy shifting. You see the lead horse watching, and then you see the horse that it's communicating with go and break up the fight, basically, and keep whatever horse started it outside of the herd.
Would you call yourself a horse whisperer?
I have been called that before, yes. But I don't really attach to a label, but yes, I have been called many things in my lifetime. And that was probably one of the ones I appreciated more than some of the others.
Well, then.
Because not everybody gets excited about being activated in that way and having their belief systems and their identity shattered.
So a step back for people who might not know what that means. When you say be activated in that way, and when you say the horses move energy, what, can you just define them in case they're new concepts?
Yes. So moving energy, the easiest way to explain that is through emotional intelligence. And when you feel the emotions in your body, that's energy, energy in motion. So the energy, the emotion that you're feeling, whether it's excited or it's a lower, denser energy, and and a denser energy could be like sadness or anger, anxiety. It's really actually the same as excitement and joy. It's just the polar opposite of it. Mm. And so I'm kind of getting into, I'm just going to go with the flow here because this is what's coming in. So people must need to hear this. There isn't a good or a bad emotion. There's just, you know, it's either like kind of pushing us or pulling us along. It's always guiding us. And without that contrast, we wouldn't really know the difference. And because humans have mishandled or misinterpreted what this energy and how to use this energy, these emotions, we've manipulated each other with them. We've made people feel, you know, we can't make people feel these. The emotions are already there, but we've highlighted or focused on the guilt energy, like guilting somebody into something. Like you can notice it in your own life. Like when you are so self-aware, you notice yourself saying something to somebody that if you tell them something that would make them sympathize with you, like you're telling a story. You're telling a story that you unconsciously don't realize that someone's going to give you energy because they're going to sympathize with you. So they're giving you their sympathy. So the horses help
Which
mirror.
is manipulation?
Well, I mean, manipulation, any word that we use is just describing an energy. So when you say, I'm manipulating someone, the energy feels like, oh my gosh, like that's bad, that's a feeling. But when you talk about a chiropractor manipulating your spine, it's like that may also still feel a little bit uncomfortable to people, but that now you're thinking, oh, it's healing me. So however you use the language, that's what I'm talking about, the law of polarity. It's not good or bad, it's just the way that we experience it. So the horses help us experience our emotions in a totally different way so that we can perceive what the emotions are communicating differently. And we can own our power. Power is just basically our awareness of energy, our awareness of our emotions and how we're using those emotions, how we're spending our emotions. Are we, you know, allowing the energy to move in and through us, the inspiration, the creativity, the expression of the creator, of source, in and through me without attachment, without expectation, without judgment? And if any of that is not going on, if you don't have a judgment, if you don't have an expectation and you don't have any of that, you're in flow, no matter what's happening. But not everybody gets excited about that. Because we come into these bodies and we get attached to these forms instead of allowing things to just kind of flow through us. So I don't know if I answered that question. I know we wanted to know what energy was. I know that was one of your questions. And you asked me something about the horses, like how they communicate it maybe.
Well, actually, no, it's very relevant to what you're saying, of energy, motion, and also this understanding that power comes from knowing how to use our emotions. And so actually that's what the other question about the horses is really about. It's this question, you said the horses have this big heart generator. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to go into that sort of actually, but really with a view of back to what you said, power and emotion. Because I think what's happening right now is people are scared and people are not feeling terribly powerful. And so where do the horses heart generator, where does this new understanding of energy and emotion and power that you've massaged the edges of, where does that take form in a way that we can use?
So really the first step is detaching from the idea that something is good or bad. Now, every belief system that's going to come up around, well, what about this and what about that and all of these things, those are all an opportunity to address them within yourself. Okay, it isn't so you can solve the world's problems with this concept. The world's problems are projections of people's inner fears, inner, distraction or disassociation from these emotions, and being afraid of being vulnerable and opening that heart up, the heart space, the space that where you feel. And when people are unconsciously, projecting their emotions and, putting their energy outside of themselves, it can feel, even when we're like, oh, I'm so in love with this person and I want to send my love to this person and it feels so good to you. So all of these things are really about boundaries and permission, because my husband really taught me about the whole, like, I'm in love energy. When someone hasn't invited that in, or they're not ready or prepared for that level of amplified focus and attention, it can feel like, in his words, razor blades. I'm like, how does this feel? And like, I'm all like rainbows and butterflies. And then he was like, it feels like razor blades. And I was like, what? Like, it totally shocked me the way he described it. But people who have been through trauma and that have done a really good job of creating a barrier around themselves because of not being able to understand or not take things personally, or haven't empowered themselves with their own feelings or their own awareness or their own ability to create in their reality and make conscious decisions and choices, and how that changes your experience. If people haven't begun to do any of that work yet, and they're just getting in and they're just noticing, oh, I feel resistance in my body, or oh, I feel bad, I feel depressed, I feel sad, I feel stuck, I feel fear. All of those emotions are just waking up the nervous system. It's very parallel to, Nemo in the Matrix getting unplugged. And like, it's like being born as an adult into this world. It's like we've numbed and disassociated from our emotions and stuffed them down so the brain could make logical, safe decisions, because we're all in constant fight or flight right now. Our nervous systems, we weren't designed to be this busy as humans have made themselves. Everybody, it's not sustainable. Everybody's working overtime at max capacity. I read an article the other day, this whole toilet paper epidemic that's going on. Like, everybody's buying toilet paper. And I actually read that the industrial production of the toilet paper is already at maximum capacity. Like, they were already working 24/7, and many manufacturers are set up this way. We're not set up to honor balance and whatnot. And so there's nothing to fall back on. Every machine, every single thing is running 24/7. Now, we could look at, this is where there's no right or wrong. We could look at it on the other side, like, oh, maybe it's more efficient for them to function in this way, so they're utilizing every machine. Who knows? Anybody can go in any direction with this. I'm just saying, they were talking about a break in the supply chain for toilet paper. Like, we quote unquote broke the system. So whenever a system is broken, it is in direct reflection of a collective system, belief system, that needed to be worked or broken down anyway. And so in terms of, moving from head to heart, and the horses having this big heart center, they're bringing us into balance because they illuminate, they highlight, they mirror, they reflect back those emotions that we don't really want to deal with. And this is forcing everyone to deal with them. So it's very common for people to get in the presence of the horses and just, they will start crying. They'll say, I feel like crying. And so they will cry because it's their body's natural way to release, you know, any resistance or, you know, emotion that you haven't been aware of yet.
Richard, when you say that these emotions are kind of like getting Nemo to wake up from the Matrix or getting us to step into sort of being more adult, are those the feeling of the emotions that you're referring to, or even just like, are they specific triggers that come and hit us, or are they us being with the horses and then starting to cry?
The emotions are already inside of us. And actually, there's so many different threads of them, and they're attached to our DNA. So when our emotion wakes up and we're able to go from one extreme to the other extreme of the emotion and then find balance, you know, in the whatever of that emotion, now you've quote unquote mastered, you've embodied it, you've gotten the gift out of this vibration. And so each thread will teach you something, you know, different about how to use your power. Now, each one of us is like the horses. Each one of us is carrying portals and gateways within us, activations. Like there's people that you meet that you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've known this person my whole life. And you just connect and you just start talking. Well, that is a certain activation that occurs, a contract. Some people call it contracts. Some people call it, you know, portals or gateways. And it's really just an activation that happens within us that wakes up an energy inside of our body that's already there, an emotion, a feeling, to illuminate our awareness at the next level, to expand our consciousness. And on the flip side, even the ones where you meet somebody and you're like, what the heck is going on? Why am I getting so triggered by this person? Why do I feel like reaching out and just like strangling this person? This isn't even my natural state. Like it doesn't make any logical sense why I'm feeling this way about this specific thing that's happening. So all of those are to activate us, to wake us up in some way, shape, or form, because we have to be able to acknowledge our shadow energy and our light energy. They work together, the yin and the yang. Like there is no this or that. Like there isn't, you know, fear and hope, like one cancels the other out. It's hope and fear. Like they motivate us and they keep us motivated, right? You know, so like you have to be able to embody both of them, because like fear can get you moving, but then it can also paralyze you, whereas like hope can also get you to be kind of like lackadaisical, like, oh, I can just live on hope. And you know, that fear can kind of like actualize something and get you to wake up when maybe you weren't paying as much of attention as you thought you were.
This back and forth of like the fear and the hope, or the joy and the sadness, or the anger and the alertness, focus, like that back and forth. When you're experiencing a lot of fear, for instance, what do you do? Like if the goal isn't to get rid of the fear, and if the goal isn't to get into love and hope and stay there forever, if the goal is to embody both those extremes, if that's what you said and if I understood you right, so that you can come into this center place of mastery, what do you do?
So I've talked about this on some of the other interviews. The first thing I would ask myself is, what do I think is creating or causing the fear? So is it, you know, am I afraid of death? Am I afraid of, you know, being alone? Am I afraid of the seclusion? Am I afraid of, like, what is it I'm afraid of? Am I afraid of the leadership that I can feel Spirit is pulling me into right now in this time? Am I afraid to shine my light and speak up right now in the chaos when everybody actually really needs me to be speaking up, even though, I've prepared for this and questioned whether or not this is what I'm supposed to be doing in this lifetime. And I've gone back and forth and I've tried to fit into all these boxes, and realizing that I fit into multiple boxes for a reason. So I can bridge, this gap between the this or the that, and realizing that the gray area is the area we all live in. So when I'm talking about fear and I'm thinking about fear, I'm identifying which thread, because each one of them is a different frequency.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a different frequency. And so, like, just a number, at least 64 different frequencies of working with these threads. So essentially, there could be 64 different fears that people are experiencing right now. And so it's waking us up to a thread that we came here to evolve or upgrade for humanity in our soul's journey. So our individual reaction to this energy is changing the trajectory for humanity, even in your own home. So how you decide to handle the fear within you, you just need to ask yourself, or that you don't need to do anything. Whatever resonates with you, you do. But what I ask myself is, how do I want to experience this the next time? Like, how would I like to experience my fear? Like, what is the communication that would put me in the highest position for this fear? And I'm not talking about, like, the answer comes in, it's like, oh, buy all the toilet paper. No, it's not what I'm talking about. How would I like to feel instead of this emotion? And if you can't go there, some people don't know. Some people will say, my mind is so frozen right now, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So then that first step is just acknowledging that the fear is there and not trying to figure out what it is. Like, if you're not in a position to figure it out, don't go in there and start coming up with answers, because that'll really make your mind go crazy. So instead, move your body. Let your body guide you and show you. So, something that I do with the horses when I'm quote unquote training them, but really training is just learning to communicate and both of us coming together in union.
You're training yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like any other relationship. You want to communicate with one another. And so, getting them to move their feet gets them out of that frozen position. So, like, if they will just move their feet, then they did everything I asked. So move your body and then allow yourself to rest. Move your body a little bit more and then do some more resting. And honor that your body may need a tremendous amount of rest right now. Because when you're being upgraded, when your body is going through a mutation, yes, we are going through a mutation in our bodies. Our DNA is upgrading. This has been talked about for I don't know how long. You can reference it all over the place. But the gene keys are my favorite reference for them. So you guys can look up the gene keys online, and there's tons of resources on there. But what's exciting about our DNA being upgraded is that when you allow for your body to start communicating what it is that it needs, your mind can start surrendering the control that it thinks it needs. The only reason our mind thinks it needs to be in control is because we've stopped listening to our bodies. We've stopped honoring nature. We have looked away from nature and created all these buildings and parking lots and spa treatments. And yeah, all that stuff is fun. I've included myself in many of those activities.
Me too. I'm sure I will.
But the amount of pollution is actually creating a force field around our cities and all kinds of things where the animals are no longer able to communicate with us.
Did you see that the dolphins came into Venice?
I did. That's what made me think about all of this. Yes. Yep. And then I also heard somebody or read somebody talking about the birds like they never knew that there were birds because it was so loud. And now they can hear all the birds singing and the birds are moving in. And it's very... Yeah.
So you're saying when we do all these things that are disconnecting us from nature, it creates this force field of pollution?
Yeah, and so the pollution is really just all of the energy and everything and the emotions that are not being focused on, that aren't the power that we have within us isn't being used.
Why do you think it is, Brigette, that so many people feel, and maybe this isn't true, but I think it is. Why do you think sorry, I'm losing my train of words. Why do you think it is that so many people feel powerless exactly when they have emotions?
Well,
when what I'm hearing you say is that following that thread of emotions is actually what unlocks our power.
So when we look at the way many of our societies have been functioning, and a lot of them are, familiar with emotional intelligence now. There's Montessori schools, there's different types of, ways that we're learning. There's nature-based schools now that are popping up. But generally speaking, from the time that many of us, when we were children, when we felt an impulse in our body to go after something, don't touch that. That's not yours. Hands off. Depending on how the emotions were handled as we were children, if we were ever shamed or, made to feel bad about how we were handling or digesting or expressing ourselves, now we're going to build a protective barrier around that emotion, and it's going to go dormant until an activation point when you've gained enough wisdom, when you've learned how to process the emotion. Now, whether you realize you've learned how to process it or not is another story. But when the opportunity comes up and you feel that emotion, it 100% is because you've gained the wisdom to process it. And the point is, if we don't allow ourselves to experience it from this higher position, this higher wisdom, then we will have another opportunity that is louder and more like catabolic.
Have you had that in your life?
Oh, yes. Yes. What was that?
What's an example?
Which one should I pick from? Can you narrow it down? Because there's so many. In what situation?
Something that just illustrates how when like something comes knocking, if you're like, no, it comes and walks.
Oh, I'll give you one. I have one. Last year, I'm clairvoyant, clairaudient, all that jazz. Like like we're all able to do all of these things when we tap into energy. It's just where are we focusing, and we can. It's like Groundhog Day. You can tap into anything you want and learn quantumly.
And have you been that way since you were a child, or is that things you practiced, or both?
You know what? I think I have been that way since I've been a child. But the cool thing that I've noticed is if you come into contact with another human being and they have that ability and you're allowing yourself, everybody put your hands up, and you're allowing yourself to let go of that identity to make room for the new information coming in, the new energy, the new emotion, the new feeling, the new sensation that isn't new at all. You're just remembering, oh, I remember how this feels. But if the brain interprets danger from that feeling, because there's, something that happened that kind of rewired the brain to defend itself instead of receive,
Mhm.
then what's happening is you're rejecting that emotion and you're building up a barrier instead of allowing for that information to come in, and you let go of whatever identity or illusion or mask you were keeping up so that you could fit in. So I'll give you an example of this. And last year I was receiving messages from spirit that I was being uncoachable. Now, when I say I was receiving messages from spirit, I heard it.
And uncoachable means?
Well, I'll tell you what it means, because I thought I knew what it meant, and apparently it wasn't what I thought. So I was like thinking to myself, like, what do you mean I'm uncoachable? Like I've been listening to everybody. Like everybody, I've been taking it all in and I've been doing what everybody's saying. Well, I went to walk out of my parents' house, and as I was walking out, I slipped on some ice and I grabbed onto the door. Instead of just letting myself fall on the ice, I held on to the door to protect myself, and I tore my shoulder blade muscle so bad that I was in bed for almost 4 weeks because I couldn't move. I couldn't stand up because it would almost make me black out. That's how painful it was. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because as I was going down, I heard the word I was being uncoachable. I heard uncoachable. I felt it in my body as I slipped on the ice. So what I realized was I needed to get quiet. I needed to get with myself. It was my inner authority. It was my guidance, my inner compass that I couldn't explain why I was being asked to do this. I couldn't explain why. And so I was allowing everyone else's suggestions, and I was like wasting my energy going in every single direction instead of trusting what my inner authority, what my inner compass or my sensations were guiding me towards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to know why. I will find out why once I move through the experience, because we're creating, at the edge of consciousness right now. This is new for us to be able to create like this. Yeah.
And just to bring that example back to tangibility for people who might be listening, what was like the emotion? What was that emotion that you were on when you first heard uncoachable, and then when it hit again and you tore that? Like, what was?
So I didn't initially have an emotion right then. The emotion I experienced when I got to lay in bed and not move for that amount of time, and like pretty much I experienced not being able to leave the house or do anything for myself. This has actually happened. What was that?
Similar to now?
Yeah.
People?
Very similar. And I've had this happen a few times where I've been in a position like that, where I've had to really rely on other people because of a physical ailment or something. And the energy really for me there was humility, letting go of another level of expectation and believing that I had to, do things in a certain way, and that spirit was going to guide me into having people help or be able to still do the job that I love to do, because it was ironic that I was able to still connect and communicate with people. And it was, it also taught me how to tap into pain and how to feel the pain and how to focus on the pain. And when I went into the pain instead of fearing the pain, I don't know, like it's almost like I could feel my body like knitting itself back together.
Wow.
It's like I knew the next morning, I knew the exact day that when I was going to wake up the next morning, and it was going to that I was going to be able to stand up and just walk without it hurting. I could feel it.
And that happened.
It did happen. Yes.
Good gosh. So that.
Yeah.
That is the power of feeling.
That is the power of feeling. And I wasn't listening to the feeling, so I got to experience it in a different way, where I had to actually focus 100% on it. And going through that amount of pain, once I surrendered and was like, okay, I will feel this, and I know that like, you're more willing to do what Spirit's asking you to do when you are in a position of pain.
This is a really extraordinary example for a lot of reasons. But top of mind is what you're saying of humility and being confined. It seems to also be like what's happening right now in the global scale. That we, for the first time, governments for the first time, are faced in generations and centuries perhaps with a problem that we can't solve. And this message of humility, I'm just, thank you for sharing that.
It's truly my pleasure to bring this information in, because you never know what Spirit is going to, bring in and through a conversation like this. And as you were talking, it's interesting because I didn't say this earlier because of all the information that was coming in, but now here's another opportunity, and that is, because of the law of polarity, if there's a problem, there is a solution. There's always a solution when you have the consciousness to notice a problem. Now, the trick to this is the problem that we think we're having is not the problem that we are actually having. And that's because we have lost connection with nature. Anybody that has connection to their intuition and to nature and has not lost their heart connection, this is no surprise. Nobody is surprised that this is happening. All of those people are in a deep state of acceptance and knowing that this is a wake-up call for the entire globe. It's giving us an opportunity to live completely differently. I started receiving loud messages about 6 months ago in relation to sustainable communities, sustainable living, the sisterhood and the brotherhood of light workers, people who will utilize the light to upgrade the system in whatever way is required. Light workers don't mean I'm skipping around on rainbows with butterflies flying around me. That is not a light worker. A light worker is whatever energy comes in, I'm going to allow it to move through my system and upgrade. And that may look like going into the cave of denser energy and then using the light to find your way out. Like the light finds the darkness.
I've heard a lot of spiritual teachers share in the last few days, rise above the fear. Don't believe the fear. Don't step into that. And that has left me feeling a little bit like, question mark on that one. But when what you just said, I heard a very beautiful articulation. Well, in the first part of our conversation about feeling, getting into the body, and you will laugh, the last interview I did was people talking about getting in the body and dancing, which was like an hour ago.
I love it.
Getting in the body, feeling. But in what you just articulated, I'm hearing you also speak to when we connect into the heart, we get the conscious, and jump in if this isn't what you meant, but when we get into the heart, we open up our consciousness so that we can see that the problem that we think we have isn't the problem that we really have, which sounds to me like maybe what people really mean when they say don't buy into the fear. They mean don't buy into the illusion. Look at what the real problem is.
Yes, and that's a really great point. And I would just add to that and say, rising, quote unquote, rising above the fear doesn't mean disconnecting from it and eating a bag of potato chips. And, yes, some of these things you may need to do to give yourself a break. Binge watching Netflix.
Does it mean going and meditating and knowing that God, love, light, source, rainbows, unicorns are the only true thing out there? And so actually you don't need to wash your hands or stay at home. Because that's the messages that are coming through.
There are a lot of rituals that are being, this is so cool. Like I haven't heard this one yet either. I love doing these channeling sessions because I never know what's going to come in. So the benefit of participating in the action and the experience of the whole is that you can go in with a totally different attitude in participating. You know, like, you don't have to do it from a place of fear. Do it from a place of hope and belief that I'm doing this and I'm participating to support the transition of this virus, but then also understanding in honoring the work that this virus is creating for us, the opportunity that this virus is giving us to, you know, come together as humanity, support each other, have compassion. I cannot tell you how many people I have heard say, this has restored my faith in humanity. Yes. Now, I've also heard a lot of other things, like, because I do go into town and I go to the grocery store to get food or whatever, and I've heard other people saying things that aren't as friendly as that. But that's the contrast. You know, that's the contrast to show us why we're in this position. There is work to do on earth together. And this is secluding all of us in a way that is causing us to reach out and be creative and, you know, connect with children in ways that we've been, you know, avoiding, truthfully. You know, the children have a real creative way of illuminating and triggering and activating, you know, those parts of ourselves that we are afraid of. You know, that's the fear. We, like, there's parts of ourselves that we, you know, we don't want to have acceptance around because somebody else didn't accept that about us at some point. And it might not even be this lifetime. It could be, you know, a survival mechanism from a previous lifetime or from previous lifetimes. You know, that's the DNA that's upgrading. So we have the ability right now to do something. Don't do nothing. You know, do something, but allow your creativity and your constructive energy to come through. Decide right now for yourself how you want to contribute to humanity. Like, look at what's broken in the system right now. Look at what is working in the system. Where do you want to put your energy? Like, as everything is breaking apart and new things are falling into place, where do you want that stuff to continue? Where would you like to see more of this stuff happening? And shine your light there. Put your focus and attention in that. And there's one more thing that's coming in about power and force. There's I think it's David Hawkins wrote a book about power and force. And one of the studies that he did in there had to do with love being the most powerful energy, basically, that was available to people in shifting and changing belief systems. Mm-hmm. And there's an exercise and whatnot in there that he has people do in order to connect with them. And one of the things he says in there too is some people may not have that anchor into love like we do. I'm saying we, you and I, or, you know, some other people. And that's why I used that example earlier with my husband, because if the wiring is backwards, the polarity is there. So I don't remember why I'm getting into that, but power.
You're getting into that also because that's the very first question I was trying to ask, which is, and go for the power, and then we'll come back to this, but it's also the last question I want to ask you, which is when a horse has a heart feel like that, and if we're not around horses, like in your city, in your suburb, in your equatorial country, how can we expand our heart feel to be like a horse's? Mm-hmm. That question, but yeah, that's how.
So, keeping your attention on yourself, on your own emotions. And when you find yourself wanting to look out here and look at, articles and, get validation out there, there's a message going on inside and it wants to be expressed in some way. And so allow for your body to give you ideas on how it wants to express this emotion. You may paint or color, you might dance, you might cry, you might scream. I love to go lock myself in my van right now, and I'll turn my music up and I'll yell in there and sing in there as loud as I can, or this is something, I don't know if I've done this recently, but it doesn't really matter. Watching a movie that is going to cause you to have a release of emotion. So something that is a good sentimental movie that you can cry to release that emotion. Like if you're distracting yourself with something, be intentional about it. Make sure what you're feeding your mind is giving you the next highest perspective for your, for your journey, for your mission, for your life, for your reality. Like allowing yourself to have your fear amplified rather than focusing on things that can help you understand the root of the fear, understand what the gift is in this fear. Like, what is the gift of this fear? Like, really challenge yourself. When you're feeling an uncomfortable emotion, and you might rage even at that suggestion. It's like, if you're feeling that emotion inside of your body, ask yourself that question so that it can express itself. And so that you can, because it's never is really truthfully, I mean, yes, there is pain and suffering happening and there are loved ones that are passing, but anyone looking around at the globe before this started happening, I noticed a huge increase in a lot of people passing and choosing to, this is my belief system, and people don't really, they can see what resonates with them in this, but the people that have transitioned and have communicated with me upon passing, they've been very clear that death isn't what we think it is. And that is a transition of energy. And that this is one of the most amazing times to be on the planet. And some people have chosen to wake us up because of the emotion it creates inside of us when we lose someone in the physical form, a pet even, a pet, a family member, a friend, a loved one, or even, a lot of the famous celebrities and whatnot that have passed or have touched us in some way that, has impacted us, and they pass. All of this activates energy or emotion inside of our body, and it gives us an opportunity to see the world in a different way, because when that kind of stuff happens, we are inspired to live differently because we realize how short life is. And, I remember when I went through a trigger of sorts when my now 7-year-old was 4 months old, and he got diagnosed with a kidney tumor. And I was working at the time in retail, and I decided right then that it really woke me up, and I could not go back to work. I could not go back to that again. And my husband's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, but I'm going to find something that inspires me, something that makes me feel alive, because I just can't keep going somewhere that doesn't make me feel like it's making a difference in this world and changing people's lives. Because I thought I was going to lose my son. I didn't know if I would lose him. And so what I picked was horses. I wanted to do something with horses. I picked what I loved the most, and it was horses. And lo and behold, because we were going through that trauma, one of my friends sent me a book that was outlining equine guided learning. And when I read the book, I felt the fire ignite inside of me. I'm like, this is what I want to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just started doing it. I just started having people come over and
or that you start channeling and doing horses.
Yeah. And you know, and then I was very you know, my path was in a very different place. I was, you know, part of a study group, a Bible study group in the church. And, you know, I was very connected to God in a different way, like more through the Bible. Like I was afraid to even step into this level of spirituality. I was still, you know, allowing for the comfort of, you know, someone else's teachings to guide me truthfully.
Mm-hmm.
And through that experience with my son and the horses, it led me to realize that, you know, I did a lot of observing and watching and feeling in my body and just not allowing whatever surprised sensations were coming up to move in and through me without attaching to it, without thinking that I knew what it was, because truthfully that this was the first time I ever went after my dream in this way without attaching to someone else. Like I needed someone else to guide me in my mission.
Thank you, Brigette. I can imagine how hearing that might help inspire a lot of people who are going to be needled and prodded by all these world events right now in a similar way.
Absolutely. Yes.
Anything else you'd like to add?
There's one last thing I wanted to say. Well, two things. One is suggestions for people that are feeling called to do something different in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So my suggestion is to think globally, but act locally. Like, what are you doing locally? And I know a lot of people are on lockdown and they're not, you know, able to go out, but I mean, there are still things that you can plan and daydream and imagine. And, you know, there's the internet right now, which is amazing. And there's plenty of resources out there for people to reach out and just share in whatever way they're being prompted. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is when we're talking about the trajectory of, you know I need to do something differently. And we're thinking about like the horses, for example. You don't have to know what the next step is going to be. As long as you take the first step, the next step and the next step just keeps showing up for you.
Like me in this meditation show?
Yes. Spot on. And just allow for that guidance to move you and to trust it, because each time you trust it, spirit will, and your emotions and your inner guidance will show you time and time again that what you think was going to happen is not what is going to happen at all.
That's beautiful. I feel compelled to share a little story about putting this show together. I initially planned to launch it March 2nd. And I got around to like February 25th and I was like, I should really postpone it. But then I got all like, but how could I postpone it? It means that like, I didn't do X, Y, Z. I wasn't on top of my game. Do I keep my word to myself? Like all of that came up for me. And then I was like, well, hang on. All of that's going on, which would impel me to keep it the same way it is. But when I get still, I actually feel like I should move the date. And so I did. And went through all those emotions. I was like, and got to the point in going through those emotions of, hang on, I know those emotions are there, but also I know I'm listening to what I feel is right. And I have these emotions about it, and I'm listening to what I feel is right. And lo and behold, like now it's coming out at this time. So yeah, case in
Yeah. You know, it's like you don't need to know why, you really have to trust it. And that is so crucial in this time, is that we're allowing ourselves to trust ourselves and what we're, you know, doing in this time, and how are we, you know, thinking of what we would like to contribute to society. That's the biggest thing. Those two questions are what will bring forth what your purpose is in all of this.
The questions are
asking yourself what you would like to contribute to society. Like, what is it that I see is needed that I also feel very passionate about?
mm-hmm. And the second question is
So it's not just that it's needed, because this is another thing. Like, we could all do very many things,
okay,
but don't just insert yourself wherever the thing is unless you feel led. Because we all need to really develop our yes and our no, our inner yes and our no, are the contrast, so that we can wire ourselves for the experiences that we want to create. So it's not just what is it that is needed. Do I really enjoy doing this, or is this something that I'm being asked to do?
Thank you. And will you tell us a little bit about this group that you have and how people can stay in touch with you and the free many gifts that you abundantly offer there?
Absolutely, I would love to. So I have Soul Embodiment Tribe on Facebook, and people can find me there. I offer live videos, my blog posts. I do channeling, group channeling events, and all kinds of, you know, offers and special deals for just the tribe, so that I can help people where they're at in their journey. And then my website is soulmassages.com. And on there, I'm giving that information just so that people, like, not everybody's on Facebook. So I want people to be able to still access that information. And I do send out via email all of my blog posts and all of my events and YouTube videos that I do. So those are two ways that they can get this information and keep in touch with me.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much, Brigette. It's been a real honor to have you on here. And honestly, the synchronicity of the different themes that have cropped up and just the way the conversation flowed was very beautiful for me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I truly appreciate you having me on here.